Everybody, welcome to the card of the week for December 4th. It is Monday. I'm recording this at 5 o'clock in the afternoon and it is pitch black dark here in Zurich. I do not have natural light coming in that window. I've actually got a ring light set up here. So I hope, I'm looking at the screen here, I hope that this video is going to be light enough for you to see me. At least I think it is. So anyway, let's get to it. The card of the week for this week is the King of Swords, and I promise I shuffled because last week we had the Queen of Swords. This week we've got the King of Swords. It is still Mercury retrograde. Actually, Mercury retrograde is here. And you remember last week when I talked about the Queen of Swords, I said that card represented mindful, elegant decision making. Blend that with Mercury retrograde. It's a great time to just sit and think about the things that don't serve you anymore. Remember the sword is of, cutting, getting rid of things. It's also of communication. So as you make these decisions, at least with the Queen of Swords last week, you make those decisions in an elegant way. And if you have to communicate those decisions, do it in a mindful way. This week, we've got the King of Swords, and the energy surrounding the King of Swords is one of, when you make those decisions, keep your feelings out of it. You have to be very pragmatic, and you have to go ahead and just get rid of the things that don't serve you anymore, even in terms of, it could be people, it could be situations, things of that nature. Now remember, again, Mercury retrograde, it means don't, hop off and just do it all of a sudden, but you can use the energy of the King of Swords to start planning how to make that cut. Coming up with some type of system, do a mind map, do some brainstorming. I'm thinking as I say this, because I've been going through some personal things myself, and I'm trying to think, do I want to share them? Do I want to be real? Oh, let's just be real. We're all friends here. This is how I'm using the energy of the King of Swords this week. If you follow me on Instagram, you'll remember that maybe about 3 or 4 days ago, I posted a card, the Ace of Pentacles, and I talked about how I am starting to reevaluate my relationship with money and how I just hate dealing with it. I don't want to think about it. And money also just, the whole thing scares me. It's just, I've never been a fan of money. And one of the reasons, because I didn't have it and I didn't grow up with it. And one thing that sticks in my mind, and yes, I'm going to bring this home to the King of Swords in just a second, but one thing that sticks in my mind is that when I moved out from my parents' place about 25 years ago, I was struggling. I struggled. I moved to a city far away from my folks. I didn't have that much money, and I took a low-paying job, and I actually was working 2 jobs. I had to have a car because the public transportation in this town just sucked, and I had to get to work some type of way, so I had to have a car. The issue is that I had problems paying the rent. And one day I came home, and there was an eviction notice on my door. I sometimes, I paid the rent, but it was very slow, and I guess the landlord just got sick of me or whatever. Anyway, I worked myself out of that. I paid the rent or whatever, and I wasn't kicked out. But what happened was that the 22-year-old me that was at that time stayed with me even as I got older. And that 22-year-old me that had that fear of being kicked out, had that fear of living under a bridge, not being able to feed herself or whatever, she stayed with me. And she has stayed with me, and she stayed with me on my shoulder. She's even kind of put her nails in my back, and I brought her all the way across the Atlantic to here. She's been a great friend. She has kept me out of trouble. She has made me keep an eye on my bank account, but what she has also done is kept me from stepping into my creativity and stepping into the person I want to be because of this fear of just being absolutely broke and absolutely homeless. I still love her. I still love that scared 22, I'm getting emotional about this. I still love that scared 22-year-old, but she doesn't serve me anymore. She doesn't, she served a purpose. And when I think about the King of Swords is saying, you know what? You got to cut her loose. You got to cut her loose because it's time for you to move on. And it's time for you to start planning to take that next step. And that's what the King of Swords means to me, and that's how I'm using this energy. And that's my wish for you for this week when you use that King of Swords energy. I am so sorry. I almost started crying with this one because it's rough. This is a rough situation for me because I'm letting go of a way of thinking that kept me safe. And maybe it kept me a little bit too safe. But yeah, that's how I'm using this card this week, using the King of Swords. And maybe this is something that can help you too. What type of feeling, or what person, or what the person that you were years ago that you love, that you cherish, but just doesn't serve you anymore? How can you plan to sort of get them off your back, to sort of leave them to the side so you can step into the person that you need to be and the person that you know to be? That's something you can think about with the King of Swords during this Mercury retrograde. All right, that's it. I've gone a little bit too deep and a little bit too long at 6 minutes. I wish you all the most wonderful, fabulous week, and I'll see you next week. Bye.